Hi, I'm Aishwarya Venkatesh. We all know about how the Chief Minister and the Prime Minister are elected because their elections involves us, the common people. That is, we know about the elections for members of Legislative Assembly and members of the lower house of the Parliament, Lok Sabha. Do we all know how the members of the upper house of the Parliament, Rajya Sabha, elected? Do we know about how the President is elected? We will look at it in this video. Let me give a basic idea of Rajya Sabha before moving on to the election process. At the beginning, it might seem a little gloomy, but keep configuring everything. At last, it all put together will make sense. Rajya Sabha has a total membership of 245 currently, out of which 233 are elected by MLAs and the remaining 12 are appointed by the President for their contribution to art, literature, science and social services. As the members of Rajya Sabha are elected by the legislature, that is the members of Legislative Assembly, MLAs, those union territories without having legislation cannot send representatives to the Rajya Sabha. Thus, only Delhi and Puducherry can send representatives to Rajya Sabha, as they are the only two union territories having legislative assembly. In case of Lok Sabha, the allocation of seats to the states and union territories are made based on the population. In case of Rajya Sabha, the fourth schedule to the constitution states that the allocation of seats shall be made based on population. But due to new introduction of states and reorganization of many states, the allocation of seats are not made in a particular proportion. This is known as digressive proportionality. For example, population of Tamil Nadu is 77 million and it has 18 representatives in Rajya Sabha. Whereas, population of West Bengal is 99 million with just 16 representatives in Rajya Sabha. This clearly shows a digressive proportionality. Lok Sabha is a temporary house, that is, it gets dissolved every 5 years. Election happen for all the members at the end of the 5-year term. Unlike Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha is a permanent house. Elections for all the members of Rajya Sabha does not happen at a time. Out of 18 representatives of Tamil Nadu, 6 retired on 2nd of April 2020. Similarly, many members retired in April from various states, including Maharashtra, Odisha, West Bengal, Andhra Pradesh and Assam. Thus, for filling the seats of these retired members, elections were conducted in April 2020 in the respective states. Now, when do we say that a member of Rajya Sabha has retired? Each member of Rajya Sabha is entitled to a 6-year term. Once any member's 6-year term gets over, then he is said to have retired. Other than this, by-elections are conducted to fill the vacancy that occur otherwise than by retirement. Example, resignation, death or disqualification. The voting system that is followed in these elections is called as single transferable vote system. Let me take help of an example to make this voting system clear. Assume that 3 members of Rajya Sabha from Tamil Nadu are retiring on 1st of May 2021. These seats have to be filled by following the single transferable vote system. Assume there are 5 candidates for these 3 seats. They are Tanuja from AIADMK, Manoj from DMK, Ram from TMC, Shiva from DMK and Priya from MNM. Usually the value of one vote would be 1, right? But for Rajya Sabha elections, the value of one vote is considered as 100. The total number of MLAs in Tamil Nadu is 234. Thus, the value of vote of all MLAs in Tamil Nadu is equal to 234 into 100, which is 23,400 votes. The total number of votes that any candidate should get for winning the elections is called as quota. Quota is equal to total votes of all MLAs divided by number of seats plus 1, the whole plus 1. The formula that we use for quota is very simple. It just represents the simple majority, 50% plus 1. Here, as the number of seats to be filled is not 1 and it is 3, the number of votes that is required for any candidate to win the election would reduce. So here, the 50% part would reduce to some lesser percentage. That's the only difference. So in case of these elections that are going to be conducted in Tamil Nadu for filling the seats of these 3 members, the quota will be 23,400 divided by 3 plus 1, the whole plus 1, which is 5,851. Thus, those candidates who reach 5,851 votes would win the election. Moving on to the next concept. Under single transferable vote system, the electors give ranking based on their preferences. Usually in elections, a vote is given to only one person, right? But in single transferable vote system, like this, ranking can be given. Here, the first preference is compulsory, but the rest of the preferences are optional. Now, let's assume that the votes given by the MLAs of Tamil Nadu are as follows. 23,400 votes were divided as 3,000 votes gave first preference as Tanu and second preference as Manoj. 500 votes gave first preference as Tanu, second preference as Shiva, third preference as Ram, fourth preference as Priya and fifth preference as Manoj. Similarly, the other votes are aligned. Now, let's consider the first preference votes. Tanu 3,500 votes, Manoj 6,100 votes, Ram 4,500 votes, Shiva 4,400 votes, Priya 4,900 votes. Manoj has secured votes more than the quota, so he will surely win one seat. None of the others have reached the quota. Thus, to select the remaining 2 who will fill the seats, that candidate who has secured the lowest number of votes should be eliminated and his or her votes shall be transferred to the rest based on the second preference. That is, Tanu has secured the lowest number of votes. This 3,500 votes will be transferred to the second preference. What were the second preference for these 3,500 voters? Out of those 3,500 voters, 3,000 voters gave second preference as Manoj and 500 voters gave second preference as Shiva. Thus, transfer shall be as follows. 3,000 votes shall be transferred to Manoj and 500 votes shall be transferred to Shiva. That 3,000 votes added to Manoj would anyways not make any difference as Manoj is already selected. In the remaining people, that is Ram, Shiva and Priya, nobody has reached the quota even after the transfer of votes. That is, they have not reached 5,851 votes. So now we shall move on to the third preference. Consider the candidate who has secured the lowest number of votes after the transfer of votes to second preference. It is Ram, who has secured 4,500 votes. Now check out the third preference of these 4,500 voters. Out of 4,500 voters, 3,000 voters have chosen Priya as their third preference. 1,000 voters have chosen Shiva as their third preference. 500 voters have chosen nobody. That is, they have not given their third preference. Thus, the transfer shall be made as follows. 4,500 votes will be divided as 3,000 to Priya and 1,000 to Shiva. After the transfer to third preference, Shiva and Priya have reached the quota and so they will fill the second and third seat that is vacant. Therefore, the three members of Rajya Sabha who will fill the vacancy are Manoj, Shiva and Priya. If the normal voting system was chosen, then Manoj, Ram and Priya would have filled the seats, as they have secured the first three highest number of votes. But in this system, the results are different. I hope you all would be clear about the election process for Rajya Sabha members. We will look at the election process for the president in our next video. Until then, take care, stay safe.